like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo to order for Monday, November the 24th, 2014, with roll call. Mr. Cummings. Here. Mr. McNevin. Here. Mr. Meering. Here. Mr. Mortimer. Here. Ms. Riley. Here. Mr. Vedro.
I am most happy to be here today.
And continue with the pledge. Flags behind the counter by the clock. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the board minutes from the November the 10th meeting as printed.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
I will abstain.
I will abstain.
Note the two abstentions, Mr. Meering and Mr. Vedro. Minutes thus approved. Brings us to correspondence. All the correspondence that I have were also corresponded to other board members, including Mr. Meering, who has thus far, I believe, compiled a list of those correspondence. There are some that came in late, and I will make sure they get entered into the record when I receive them. But Doug, I would allow you to, on behalf of the board.
Okay, well, again, I think the board received a lot of these already. The first one I received was from the Sauk County Chair, Andrea Lombard, speaking about a session that was regarding the Common Core. That was last week. There has been various teachers, some are talking, there's lab assistants that are concerns about the budget, an English teacher concerned about the budget, and then concern about the food service, and some of that discussion will occur tonight. Many people sent us, again, discussions on the transgender policy. I'll just read off some of these names. Jim and Gina Marazak, I'm probably butchering the names, Lloyd and Sharon Bixby, Fred Chloe Morgan, Sue Fletcher, Ruth Dawson, David Vanderschaft, Heather Shupnick, and James Lombard, and as Kevin said, there was probably quite a few that came in later this afternoon that we will take account for and add to the record.
Okay, just a few names to add. Same thing on the transgender policy issue. Amy Van, Larry Smith, Bob Cupp, Dawn Cupp, Bob Capel, Andy Kamla, and the last one was Norma Spencer. So those were all in regards to the policy that is in our agenda under new business. Any other board members with correspondence? Mr. Vedro.
I have received numerous phone calls from around the state and the country, as I'm sure many of my fellow board members have. I appreciate that people are concerned and expressing that concern. I have tried to answer every phone call and to assure those people who have expressed a concern that this board is knowledgeable about statutes, about law, and is seeking the most important guidance to guide us to a meaningful and purposeful decision around this concern. And I appreciate all of the input. Thank you.
Any other board members' comments on correspondence? Hearing none. Administrative correspondence?
None this meeting.
Hearing no additional correspondence brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Public Viewpoints. We did have a sign-up sheet, and try to keep things in an orderly fashion. I would just appreciate if I call your name when you approach the microphone, which is at the end of the table here. First up, Emily Arenzi, representing the Baraboo High School GSA, and the subject is the Transgender Student Participation Policy. And Wanda Nims is up next.
My name is Emily Arenzi, and I'm here tonight as a GSA advisor. GSA stands for Gay Straight Alliance, and it's an anti-bullying group that is committed to making school a safe place for all students, including students who may identify as LGBT+. Plus just indicates that there are many ways that people are unique, and the letters L, G, B, and T don't necessarily capture them all. I wanted to take a moment to speak in support of the policy for transgender students who participate in athletics. This policy is about making sure that school is a place that is safe and accessible to all students. Baraboo schools should not be a place where students feel discriminated against or in danger because of who they are. This policy makes it possible for students who sincerely identify themselves as a gender other than what they were assigned at birth to participate in sports that are appropriate for their gender identity. I understand that it may not be easy to comprehend what it feels like to be a transgender child or adult. It may not make sense to you how a person can know that their gender is other than what they were assigned at birth. Often gender is described as a binary with two choices, but the reality of the human experience is far more complex than that. Yet despite our own experiences, we can work together to advocate for all children. I also want to be clear about why I believe this policy should be passed tonight. As a board, you are responsible to make sure that you have policies in place to meet the needs of kids. Setting this policy now means that no student in Baraboo will have to be the one to sacrifice privacy and become a target by requesting that their rights be respected and that they be allowed to participate in the sport that is aligned with their gender identity. This sets a policy for students and staff so that if an issue should come up, we already have guidelines in place for our educational professionals to respectfully work with student athletes to determine the best actions for all involved. Finally, I just want to send some statistics your way that may help you understand why an articulated support for the rights of LGBT+ students is the right thing to do. The following statistics come from recent surveys reported in transequality.org and stopbullying.gov. Transgender students in grades K through 12 reported alarming rates of harassment. 76% were harassed at school, 38% were physically assaulted, and 5% were the victims of sexual violence. Harassment was so severe that it led 21% to leave school. 30% missed at least one day of school in the past month because of safety concerns, compared to about only 7% of a national sample of secondary students. LGBT+ students in states with safe school laws that protect the rights of transgender people report hearing fewer homophobic remarks in school, experience lower levels of harassment and assault based on sexual orientation or gender expression, and had fewer suicide attempts. We know that policies like the one you will be discussing tonight are effective in supporting LGBT+ students and do in fact increase student engagement and decrease victimization. Whether or not any student utilizes this policy, having it in place sends a strong message to students that Baraboo Schools respects and supports all students, regardless of any of their individual characteristics or identities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Wanda Nims. Ginny Meziarska is next. Your last name, sorry.
I haven't seen Sean since the last time I was here.
I know. You're lucky.
But I'm going to start out with a Bible verse from one of my favorite Psalms. It's Psalm 19. The last verse is, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. And I'm not standing up here to say that this policy shouldn't go into effect, but I was noticing in the paper that there is no other, none other town around here that's thinking that they need to get it up. I don't know what Danny Scott was trying to do, but when I heard that clip from the first reading, I was astounded. There wasn't any discussion. It sounded like nobody knew what it was about. So hopefully you're all in a lot better shape right now on knowing what it's about. But because I love the Lord, I think this is a bad policy. Not that I don't love all these students, because I sure had some that went through the Baraboo School District. And so I wasn't intending to speak, but there was only 2 of us here when I got here, so I thought maybe there's not going to be very many people here. So I put my name down. So I don't have any written anything, but I'm totally against starting down this road. Totally against it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wanda. Ginny, help me with your last name. I hope I didn't get it.
Meziarska.
Thank you.
What is the time limit? I don't believe you.
3
mentioned.
minutes.
3 minutes? Then I'll be motoring through this.
Okay.
This is a policy that allows minor children who identify with a gender different from their biological gender to participate in athletics based on the gender they identify with. According to our Director of Pupil Services, Danny Scott, the policy would be the first of its kind in the area. It is not an anti-bullying policy. I'd like to remind all of us that this is a high school policy. In any adult population, 0.3% identifies as transgender, and so I must ask, why are we going through all these contortions regarding testosterone suppression and hormone therapy for an average of 3 students maximum at the very most? I'm sure I'm not the only community member who has outstanding questions regarding this policy. I would hope our school district is not allowing outside organizations to foist an agenda upon us that uses WIAA policy to convince and or bully them and the community into thinking they must pass a similar policy in order to participate in WIAA athletics. To date, there is no indication that this is the case. Though the policy as crafted by our district does not mention bathroom and locker room issues, it is most probably a backdoor approach to these bigger issues. Once school districts implement the WIAA policy, they will be forced to adopt a so-called equitable locker room, bathroom, changing room accessibility policy, a policy that breaks down natural inhibitions, removes, ignores, or eliminates the differences between the sexes, and breaks down the natural desire for privacy in these areas. This has no place in our schools, and simply said, this policy puts kids at risk. To the general public, this policy has all the appearances of being on a fast track. It was passed through committee on November 3rd, and 1 week later, it was before the school board on November 10th for first reading, where it passed unanimously, which meant it was ready to go to second reading. That's 21 days from committee to second reading for the policy to become a broad policy for the entire district. The November 10th meeting was posted on our school district website and was quite revealing. In 90 seconds, the policy was introduced as one of a collection of policies by Mo Riley, who attempted to explain the policies and resorted to asking for assistance from someone who appeared to imply that we needed this policy in order to participate in WIAA athletics. There was no discussion. The policies, all 5 of them, along with 411.2, passed unanimously. This was all within the scope of a 35-minute meeting, which clearly allowed ample time for general discussion on such a controversial and first-of-its-kind policy. It appeared even the school board members were not fully aware of and knowledgeable about this policy. Tonight, I hold our school board members to a higher standard than this. I expect you to know the policy you are approving and know the reasons for approving the policy on behalf of our school district's children, not simply rubber stamping. I respectfully request you kill this policy, or at the very least, table it tonight so parents, citizens, and taxpayers have ample opportunity to dialogue with school board members and the administration before final consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Up next, Kristen Terry. This is in regards to emergency and personnel day changes in the handbook.
Hello, I'm Kristen Terry, and I have worked in the Baraboo School District. This is my 20th year, and I have heard that there are proposed changes, among many, and obviously hard changes and hard budget cuts, that it is proposed that for teachers you are cutting the personal days from 2 to 1, and that the proposed change for emergency leave is from 5 days to 3 days. I'm very concerned about this. I know when I was a first and second year teacher, I thought, who in the heck uses 5 emergency days? And then my dad died, and I needed all 5 of those days. I never thought I would. I know that the board uses a lot of data, and I'd really like to see what the data is on how many people use all 5 emergency days and how much the board would save if we cut from 5 to 3, because from what I can gather from people I see around me, most of us don't use them. But when you need them, as in a death in the family, it's a very appreciated benefit. As is the 2 personal days. I guess, you know, in the business world, people call them vacation days, but here they're personal days. And I suppose some people in the community would say, you have all summer. But unfortunately, I don't get to do a lot of summer things because my husband's a farmer. So we're pretty much stuck. And just having that, again, I'd love to see some data. Are the businesses in the area cutting vacation time to save money? I just worry that when you have to weigh what is the cost savings and what is the effect on morale of your staff and how much those benefits are appreciated, that you take another look at that, and please think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Tom Keister, in regards to the transgender policy, and Carol Kalia is next.
Yes, thank you. I just found out about this yesterday, and so what I'm going to say is I really think that this transgender thing should be stopped immediately until this thing is absolutely looked through and examined thoroughly. I think the world we're living in just seems to be out of control, and this is just one more thing that is a kind of a slippery slope. Where does it end? Where does it stop? Where's right? Where's wrong? Where's yes? Where's no? And I think just common sense has got to be brought back into the equation. So I didn't prepare a lengthy speech or anything like that. I just wanted to let you know my viewpoints. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carol?
Well, I didn't prepare anything either, but I'm going to echo a little bit about what you said. It was wonderful, all the information that you had discovered and gave to us. But I agree that there should be no discrimination. I think that that's absolutely correct. Nobody should be discriminated against. Christians should not be discriminated against. People who are atheists should not be discriminated against. People who feel that there is a transgender issue should not be discriminated against. If they want to go and join a sports, do sports in the high school, I agree. That's wonderful. Everybody should be able to have that chance. But as was said before, that's that slippery slope where, okay, then what do you do about the restrooms? What about the showers, changing rooms? What about the safety of girls in their own shower room when a boy comes in and is somebody going to monitor at the door to make sure that that boy is a transgender boy? I mean, it just scares me to think of what could happen if we adopt this policy as it goes down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Scott Frostman next, and then William Wenzel.
Well, I do have something prepared. Imagine that. My name is Scott Frostman. I'm representing myself, speaking regarding proposed board policy 4112, transgender student participation. As most of you know, I served on the Bear Bush School Board from 2009 to 2011, and specifically served on the Policy and Educational Legislation Committee, the committee that heard and referred the proposed policy to the full board. My request on behalf of myself and a substantial part of the community is that the implementation of this policy be tabled until such time as the community as a whole has had the opportunity to review this proposed policy and is able to ascertain an understanding of its ramifications. Ideally, this would include an opportunity for an open forum for discussion. My contentions are as follows. The proposed policy was presented for review in a November 3rd, 2014 meeting of the Policy and Educational Legislation Committee. As of this writing, there is not an available transcript of that meeting available for public inspection to ascertain the details of any deliberations that occurred at that meeting. The proposed policy was brought forth for the first reading at the November 10th, 2014 regular school board meeting. At that meeting, there was not an actual first reading of the policy. I've sat in many of these school board meetings where there was actual Doug or whoever or I or Ed at the committee actually read the policy. There was no first reading of the policy that actually occurred, and I would ask at the appropriate time that the president of the school board respond to the parliamentary procedure of not actually reading the policies. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in your board packet. If someone did not have an actual board agenda in their hands while watching that, they would have no idea what those policies were, no idea of individual policies or what those policies contained. And I think that's really inappropriate. So I'll leave that at that. So I don't think a first reading occurred. So I think it would be appropriate to table it so that a first reading actually can occur. Further, the rationale for the policy is a flawed rationale. At the November 10th board meeting, non-committee members were told by a school administrator, not by a board member, that the policies were in conjunction with new state regulations or guidance from WIAA. I would request that if a new state regulation is cited, that regulation be provided. If that's the rationale, and a regulation is not cited, you can expect a Freedom of Information Act request. Additionally, I have reviewed the WIAA Pupil Non-Discrimination Guidelines for Athletics, and the content of the proposed policy seems to run in contrast with the stated objective that boys are not to participate in girls' sport. This is from the WIAA policy. In the matter of boys competing on girls' teams and girls competing on boys' teams, Title IX requirements and subsequent case law generally allow students to cross over only if there is no team for one sex and athletic opportunities for that sex have been limited in the past. In Wisconsin and many other states, this approach allows girls on boys' teams under certain conditions, but it does not allow boys on girls' teams. DPI/WIAA philosophy tolerates the apparent unfairness to boys in this situation only because the alternative would be more discriminatory. And I can enter that into board correspondence if you like. The transgender participation policy developed by the WIAA in 2013 does not contain any mandates for member districts to adopt said WIAA policy, nor any specific recommendations. Again, if the rationale was that this was being implemented to conform to WIAA rules, you are misinformed. You have a duty as an elected board member to ascertain whether the policy proposed is just a template or an actual requirement. Nothing has been done to research the required changes to facilities or to learn the costs associated with such a policy. All we are in the community are asking is that the matter be tabled for such a time as to complete review of this policy can occur. Thank you.
Thank you. William Wenzel.
Good evening. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say from my experience in the Baraboo School District, I've never seen that a safety issue was a problem here with our teachers. We have always had teachers that I think have always provided a safe zone for our students, and they should be commended there. Someone once said that diversity brings division, and so I commend the teachers and the staff of the Baraboo School District for maintaining a safe house area for our students. And that being said, personally I'm against the transgender implementation of that bill for our bylaws. Personally, also, I think economically there's a stress load regarding a lot of the people that have discussed already regarding what needs to be done regarding the facilities to acquire for these children. And the final thing is the recent evidence about hormone therapy, when you have to have a doctor that is going to okay this individual, that there is a lot of information coming to light about toxicology regarding, let's say, estrogens in our environment today, and creating an increase in estrogen-dominant females and estrogen-dominant males, which create changes in their sexual orientation, their sexual ideas, those type of things. So toxicology is a factor that I think a lot of this area is all new, and I think in minimum we should table it until we can have medical discussions also regarding some of these issues, regarding the changes that we are seeing in our society, regarding toxins and that type of influence upon the population at large. So my final point is I think we should table this issue, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wenzel. And thank you to all that signed up for public viewpoint segment tonight. Brings us to the portion of the agenda called recognition. We have, I'm sorry?
Is it possible for others to speak?
How many other people want to speak? All right. Yes, ma'am. Is there one more? I thought I saw another hand.
You have to allow public viewpoints for as long as they want to talk.
Not necessarily, but I'm more than willing to allow, if is there another individual that wished to speak? Thought there was another hand. Okay, we got two.
Hello there. Hello? Is this on? Yeah, okay. Okay. My name is Diane Deering.
Thank you.
And I have a swimmer, a girl swimmer, female swimmer. And I'm just kind of thinking about this. I'm not sure. It seems just really odd to me and very problematic. It was interesting. My second oldest daughter, she knew I was coming to this meeting, and she asked me, she said, Mom, the thing I'm really concerned about is people just pretending to have this issue, this transgender identity issue, just because they want to be in a girls' locker room or what have you. I think that Baraboo, I would just like to say, we are seriously at a crossroads, and we have a huge thing ahead of us, and I sure hope that we go the right path, which is common sense says this doesn't make sense. And it also does open a door that I think once is opened, there's no shutting it, and it's wide open. So I hope that you will allow us as the taxpayers and the parents of these students to have more input than we have so far been able to have. We get, in our email, we get those little messenger, where you get your email and it says messenger, and you know it's from the school. We get emails about our kids' lunch accounts. We get emails about, the report cards. And we get emails about, hey, guess what? The report cards are going to be online soon. We get emails about everything, but there has not been an email about this. And I just think that on a snowy Monday night, when you look and see how many people are here, I would suggest that if more people knew what was going on, this place would be 3 times as packed. So I think we need to be really careful here. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't like getting in front of people to talk, but this is a big issue. I'm a retired teacher. My name is Denise Wenzel. One thing that I used to tell my students in class is, and I like the comment, diversity brings division, because it does. I told my students, every classroom, it used to be that every classroom and all of your teachers, it was a safe zone. We are all the same inside. We have different thoughts and that type of thing, but we're all people. And you are all safe in my classroom, and you should be safe in every classroom. We don't need extra rules and different things to say this and that. We are all here together learning. So I guess my thought is, we don't need these things. We just need to be who we used to be. We care about our students. We're teachers. We're a student body. Let's care about each other. But we have to be careful about what we say to each other, of course, and how we treat one another. I do, too, think that this should be tabled. This is a huge issue. I think that if it went through, as a retired teacher, I would be concerned, if I were a teacher today, I would be concerned that there would be a large exodus of students, families taking their students out because of this. So I think it should be tabled and thought about much more carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. You would like to speak? Yes. This is the last one, though. Unless somebody has a different topic, that's fine. I think we get the gist of what people are indicating.
Okay, my name is Larry Smith. I'm a taxpayer. A couple of issues I had as I was looking at this proposed policy on transgender. One is at the age of high school age, are they at a point where they can really identify that, yes, they are confused, they are opposite sex than what they are? I contend that at that age, they don't really know yet. To force them into a mold at that age might be real problematic. Secondly, you're dealing with locker room issues that come up before. To have a biologically different sex in the locker room for changing, for showers or whatever, can be very problematic for the kids that are there. And I don't think every child or every high schooler who is in the school would necessarily feel comfortable with having the opposite sex biologically in the shower. The The third thing, and I think was just how about the other schools? If this is sports where you're going to other schools, then are the other schools as well equipped to handle maybe different locker rooms, maybe something else, some other kind of arrangement to have the biologically different students in competing in the sports with what they would not normally have. So now you've got the need for maybe 4 locker rooms for interscholastic sports. We don't know. That's an area where we are treading on, which might be very, shall we say, risky to go there right now. So at the very least, this should be tabled until further thought and discussion is given to it. And I agree with those who spoke before me that we have some time to deal with it on a public basis and give it some more consideration as to how it's going to affect the other students as well as somebody who may be sexually confused at the age of 13, 14, 15. I would venture to say that some of you people sitting at the desk at that age may have had confusion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody that was here tonight to speak. Brings us to the point of the agenda for recognition, and we have Joey Roush and our cross-country coach, Peter Arndt. So I was one of the highlights of the meeting, so.
Thank you. May I?
Yes, please.
This is our man, Joey Roush. Joey was one of our good runners on our conference championship team this year. He qualified for the state championships, and he was very close to being all-state. It was just announced on Sunday that Joey was named to the Wisconsin State Journal All-Area Cross-Country Team. And Joey doesn't know this, but Joey has been selected as an academic all-state, which is wonderful. Yes. To have that honor, you have to run at the state championships and also maintain a 3.5 grade point average. So Joey is very disciplined, not only in his training, but also in the classroom, and that's what Bear Brook Cross Country is all about. I think Joey would just like to say a word or two.
Thank you. Yeah, I just couldn't be more appreciative of the school, of all the parents, all the coaches, all the students. They've been really supportive, and I couldn't be more proud to run for a better school. So I just have to say a big thank you to everybody.
Joey, we're so happy to have you here tonight, and we're so proud of the way that you represented your school and the school district. So on behalf of the Board of Education, I have a medallion Honors for Excellence for you as a remembrance of your time here. Congratulations. And Pete Arndt, Mr. Arndt, don't run away. Athletic Hall of Famer here, but indeed a terrific coach. He has mentored so many athletes over his career, and I'm sure you could say that what a wonderful mentor and model he is for all of you. I know he's out there running with you guys. So this isn't as good as the athletic, honor that you received, Hall of Fame, but on behalf of the district, thank you for your contributions and the impact that you're having with so many of our athletes. Thank you.
Just indulge me for 2 more minutes. Bear Brook Cross Country started in 1964, and even a simple social studies teachers can figure out that's about 50 years. And our program has won 33 conference championships in that time. And it's not all about winning, but we certainly want to do that, and we try so very hard. I've been so blessed to be able to come back to my hometown and teach and coach. And the late Harry Salutis once said that coaching better be teaching. And that is something that I've always wanted to think about. And I don't want to ramble too much here, but it's been a true blessing to be able to come back to my hometown to teach and to coach, and always a Thunderbird. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Up next under reports, the strategic planning update, and also hopefully an approval of the revised mission statement and core beliefs. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ritzenthaler. We've got a couple members from that core planning team here to present.
Yeah, just a brief update. We have met 3 times as a committee. A list of committee members was provided in your board packet. We have parents, business owners, community leaders, teachers, support staff, administrators. So a nice diverse group from our community, and we've made great progress. And tonight we have with us Matt Jervelin, a committee member, and Karen Aylesworth. And they are here to talk a little bit about the revised mission statement and core beliefs. We have identified 4 broad goal areas for the district, and we're working to refine the strategies. And so after tonight's meeting, we hope to come back in late January or February to present the plan. And I forgot to mention, we also have 3 board members as a part of that strategic planning as well.
Thank you. First, I'll say we've had 6 hours, 3 days or 3 nights worth of meetings with a few more to go. It seems to me that we just finished the 2011 strategic planning, so I was happy to be asked back. The process has just been fantastic. I've got 3 kids in the district, a 7th grader, a 4th grader, and a 2nd grader, boy, girl, girl. And we moved here 5 years ago. Baraboo is a fantastic district, and to be able to be a part of the strategic planning, both in the 2011 version and what we've started here a few weeks ago, I'm really appreciative of being able to be involved like I am. Our current mission statement says that the school district of Baraboo is dedicated to being the best educational community by supporting the maximum growth of each student, enabling each to succeed in and contribute positively to a continuously evolving world. Our revised mission statement: the school district of Baraboo strives for excellence to ensure that every learner is successful in an evolving world. We've got 5 core beliefs, and we've revised those core beliefs to focus on future investment, collaborative engagement, personalized learning, and a safe environment. And those are in front of the board tonight with what those statements mean and details regarding those. But I must say, just from my standpoint, both as a parent and as someone who works up at BOU, this district, both on the outside looking in, as well as now being able to kind of look behind the curtain, really shows the strength of this district and forward thinking and always with concern of all learners. And for that, I'm proud to have my students here in the district, and proud to be a Baraboo resident.
I talked to Matt last night, and he said I only had to talk for 30 seconds. I wanted to thank you guys for doing this. It's been an awesome experience. I've got 2 kids in high school in Baraboo, and they've been here their whole school lives. And what I've noticed is each time I get more involved in the school, I see that there's just such a depth, and there's so many caring people out there. And I feel like the same has been for the Strategic Planning Committee. It's a whole bunch of people. There's high school students, there's BOU students, adults, teachers, not that teachers aren't adults, but like, you know, there's just a whole range of people, and it really is, I feel like it really works well, and they kind of mix us up, and we're mixing up our ideas, and it's really, I think it's working great. I was sort of prepared for like some really boring meetings, but it's been really good. And I feel like it's really pulling together a lot of diverse people from the community, and I would encourage everybody to get involved with the school system, because I'm always pleasantly surprised. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Does the board have any questions at this point from either of our community members or other board members who have been part of this process? The reason we felt strongly about changing the mission statement is our first mission statement was rather lengthy, and comments from committee members said it was very difficult to remember, and it's something that we should be able to really recite
off the top of our head. And so we wordsmithed it like we did the first time. And the same with the core beliefs. This time you see headings in each of those areas and a brief description of what those beliefs mean to all of us as a diverse community. And so we are asking tonight for the board's approval of these changes and your blessing to move forward with the process, and we hope to be back soon with more details.
Well, I just want to thank all the community members that have taken part. I'm just impressed with the depth of the understanding and how it assists us in making the decisions we make. Even these things really help direct us in the decisions we make, to always remember what's important, what are our values, what is the mission of what we want to do as a school district. And so as we proceed and we make our decisions, even on tough stuff like the budget, it helps to have that vision. And again, the community needs to be part of that vision. So I thank you, Paul, for all the work.
Do you want to introduce a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the revised mission and revised core beliefs for our strategic plan, and to continue to move ahead on the strategic planning process.
I'll second that motion, and I'd like to say that as a member of the strategic planning committee, I think it's really important to know how diverse, how many members are involved in this process. We must have about 40. Over 40 people coming to each meeting. They represent businesses, they represent families, parents, students in the schools, alumni from Baraboo High School, from the Baraboo School District, to nonprofit organizations in the community. The fact that there is, really such wide representation, I think, means that certainly that our plan will be one that fits very well with the community and draws from its strengths, draws from its resources, but also that that the schools don't operate in isolation. We really look to the community for input, for ideas, for help and assistance, and that's what we're going to continue to do for the next 3 to 5 years under this strategic plan. That was a second.
Having a motion and a second. Motion by
Really
Meering,
lengthy
seconded by
second.
Riley, and some discussion. Is there further discussion?
I would just like to, as a member of the Strategic Planning Committee in 2011, honor the work that has been done by the new group. I think this helps clarify by simplifying language, but not at all changing the fundamental beliefs and principles upon which we as an educational community operate. I'm a great believer in what's known as Pareto's Law. Anyone who's ever had any conversation with me will always hear, what is the 20% that does the 80? That is what this document guides us by. There is a tremendous amount of division, diversity, difference of thinking in the 80%. But it is the 20% that makes the difference, that keeps us a community. And that is what we must focus on. We are, all of us, challenged to find the common ground. And the common ground is not in the differences that we have, but ultimately in these defining principles that guide us in our decisions. And I applaud the work that has been done here. Thank you.
Any other comment? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for presenting. Thank you
See
for
you
being
at
here.
the next meeting. Thank you.
Brings us to continuous school improvement, and the approval of new course proposals.
I'm going to have Lori facilitate this, but we have some guests tonight I think that we're going to start with, and we're going to be asking for a little bit of assistance from some people here tonight at our meeting with some of the courses.
I just want to start out, I did give you a hard copy, so it's easy to follow. That is a summary document of the 9 new course proposals that are being brought forward for your consideration. These course proposals were generated in content area teams and with different building levels to discuss what their needs are and what kind of relevant coursework that we'd like to introduce to keep our students engaged. After that, it has come to our district curriculum council for discussion and feedback and revision, and also at our district leadership team and central office. And so what's coming forward to you tonight is the final proposal. I just want to briefly touch upon the budgetary impact, since that's another portion of our conversation tonight. If you look at the second page, at the end, just for a point of reference, the new courses that we implemented for this school year, we had 24 new courses that we implemented, and the total cost of those courses is $56,605. These nine new course proposals would total $34,485. So it is an amount that we feel we can comfortably support with the curriculum budget, and still there's a recommendation for budget considerations later to reduce the curriculum budget by $50,000. That would still be comfortable to do and support these new courses. So I just wanted to make that easy for you to understand. I did ask some Baraboo District Ambulance Service members to come and talk to you tonight about the emergency medical technicians. I'm going to have these 2 gentlemen come forward. They can make their way. I have Chris and Brian here, and because this is such a unique course, I just wanted them to spend about 3 to 5 minutes sharing with you the opportunity that this course can bring to our students. So I'll kick it off to you, Chris. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. My name is Chris. This is Brian. We're with Baraboo District Ambulance Service. Most people don't know, but we have a small training center. We train emergency medical technicians and advanced emergency medical technicians for to supply the local services with ready volunteers and anyone who wants to jumpstart their career in emergency medical services. Recently, the state of Wisconsin is trying to recognize a need. Am I speaking loud enough? By the way?
You're okay.
Everybody hear me? Okay. Recently, the state of Wisconsin tries to recognize a need that local EMS services, being primarily voluntary in the rural areas of Wisconsin, are struggling. The last 4 years, we lost 58 ambulance services not because of budgetary issues, but because of lack of enrollment. In an effort to find new sources for ready and eager volunteers, the state of Wisconsin decided to try a pilot program, which is now going on its 3rd or 4th year, trying to tap into the eagerness and willingness and I would say lots of energy and lots of desire to help their community and the more promising high school students. I have had conversations at our own service with some of our members that have parents that have desired to have their own kids participate in this when they become of that age. Some have seen that it might not be in their best interest, but what we hope to do is to utilize, again, the youth and energy of promising high school students that wish to go on to a medical career. EMS is a great jumping point. I utilized this idea with my own son 4 years ago, who is now a senior in Marquette. He wishes to be a surgeon. He has now, for the last 4 years, been an advanced emergency medical technician. Quite honestly, as a college student, it beats flipping burgers. And he now has approximately 2,000 patient contact hours that he can put on his resume when he applies to med school next summer. We also have another promising student from our past. You might remember a student from Baraboo, McCartney Wren. And did you see her in the paper recently? She just voted into the National Honor Society. She's one of our more promising. She came to us a few years ago in our summer program. And that's when we started hatching the idea that high school seniors would be a great fit to try this program. This is very much a pilot program with the state, and we hope to work with the Baraboo School District. The Baraboo School District has been unbelievably supportive of what we do. We utilize this library here for our national registry exams 3 times a year. So we hope this is a way that's a win-win. We can pay back the high school's generosity, and that we can assist the member services in our county to come up with a new resource for volunteers and or get these children jump-started in their medical career by getting them on the ground floor with EMS.
Thank you, Chris.
And
Awesome.
Yeah, so it'd be a collaborative opportunity between the school district and the Baraboo District Ambulance Service, with the ambulance service providing the instruction with a teacher, teacher of record monitoring the class. Also, Dr. Bartman here at the high school is offering to collaborate and teach some of the coursework along with the Baraboo District Ambulance Service, so we're asking for your support tonight. And we're also seeking grants that are available across the state for supporting the cost of tuition for students to participate.
How many students could participate in a semester or in a school year?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
Do you have a max?
We typically model our classes fairly small, usually around 16 students. With the cooperation of the high school, we could probably run 2 concentric classes. If you're looking at a school year, that's 32 students for starting, and we would like to run that for 2 school semesters. It would also, there are prerequisites involved. So we're looking at a semester of anatomy and physiology as a prerequisite before the students become involved with the EMT program.
And a student could get a certificate with 2 semesters?
Right, after 2 semesters of coursework, they could get 2 certifications.
Oh.
That will allow them to start working right away with our own service. Would be a feather in the cap of the school district, in my opinion.
We do recognize, that the vast majority of the students that go through our program will probably not stay in the area. But given the fact that in the past we've sponsored programs and a 10% return on investment is actually a great return for volunteers. So we hope that this is a way, it's a feather in the cap for the Baraboo School District, but it's also a great jumping platform for any student looking to get into the medical field. This is a good place to get their feet wet, so to speak.
Thank you very much. We also have other courses that I'm not sure if you have questions. We have a number of teachers here able to address some of your questions. So I'll leave it up to the board to kind of direct our conversation.
Thank you both for being
Yes,
here
thank you
tonight. I
so much.
appreciate your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Thank you.
As far as the English, do we have an idea? I mean, I saw like a limit of 15 students, but how many would potentially be taking those classes?
Well, a minimum class, we'd want to have 12 to 15 students, but a normal class size could be more than that. But I actually want to call on Jane McMahon, and is Reba here too?
No,
Karen's here.
Okay.
Karen's here.
Okay. All right, Jane would like to talk to you guys about a little bit about the English 9 course.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. For those of you, I'm sure you know because you've already changed the school district policy, but the state changed their state law that said that kids in middle school, if they're taking high school classes, as long as it's taught by a qualified teacher and using equivalent assessments as the high school class, the kids at the middle school can get credit for a high school class taken in 7th or 8th grade. And you know that for a long time, our math classes have really been aligned in a way that kids would get slotted in a way that allowed them to progress with their skills to the point of even having geometry at the middle school level. And in language arts, we've really been, we've had 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, and had to differentiate within those classes. And this offers us a really unique opportunity to subject level advanced kids when it's, when they meet criteria that would indicate that, hey, this kid's, needs an additional challenge, and we can better help them get a year's worth of growth in a year's time if we allow them these opportunities. So that's kind of what's behind this idea. Federal legislation would have you believe that the purpose of education, I think sometimes, is to bring everybody up to proficiency. But, really it's not, right? That shouldn't be at the cost of kids who are advanced learners who also deserve a chance to get a year's worth of growth in a year's time. And so this would allow us to meet their needs. Some people say, oh, but what about those kids who are struggling? Of course we need to continue to work to bring our struggling learners up to a level of proficiency. It will never be done, but it doesn't mean that it has to be at the expense of our advanced learners either. I think we can work to do both.
And I don't know, Doug, if your question is the percentage of students that could benefit from this particular course. I looked at data over the weekend, and we have 40 students currently in our 8th grade on their fall math assessment scored at the spring college and career readiness benchmark in reading. So before we even started really instruction, they're already at the end, well above proficiency.
Which is good.
Right. So we have about 40 students currently that if we had a class something similar to this, that would be better meeting their needs.
Okay.
I think, Jane, I think that the phrase 1 year of progress in 1 year's time is, underpins what every class, what we need to do, what we need to achieve. And I certainly know of kids who haven't been able to do that because there haven't been the opportunities for them to move forward. But I'm gonna play devil's advocate here just a little bit by saying, how will this play out? We've been working so hard to be able to differentiate within the classroom. Is this by removing some students into a new series of classrooms, or a new classroom? Will the teacher in that original classroom still be required to focus on a diverse classroom and differentiate, or is this kind of allows that teacher a little bit of relief?
Well, I think, differentiate is easy to talk about it. It's really hard to do. And I don't think we're talking about a lot of kids here. It wouldn't be, it's not going to create necessarily like a tracking system in all of our classes. Teachers still would have to differentiate within their classes, but by taking a piece of the top end off, it might make it a more manageable group to differentiate for. And I would like to see us continue with clustering, although, it's something I think that is continually evolving, and we already have some ideas for improvement in our second go-around when we cluster at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level. So I also have to say that just all of the research, so there are a ton of us from the middle school and the gifted and talented cohort, and I'm here on behalf of all of them. They've all given a resounding, yes, move forward with this. They're all in favor. This was proposed by our K-12 language arts curriculum leader, Rita Ehlert, and myself together. So we have the support of her as well. So all the research supports, even though sometimes in our minds we think, oh, subject level advancing is going to be bad for kids. It's going to, not be good for them emotionally. All of the research says the opposite. All the research says, it's beneficial, and when kids are not happy with it, typically it's because they wish they could have been advanced twice as much or more.
Will we still be? I agree with you 100%, and I'm really glad to hear that the cohort group is behind this. That says a lot. Will we still be using Wickedy as resources, or because aren't some of those kids in Wickedy literacy or language programs?
Yeah, a lot of, most of our kids who are in Wickedy come out of that program, and I would imagine that this would reduce the need for that potentially altogether, ultimately.
Okay.
So at a savings.
Yeah, we can participate with students in 5th grade.
Okay.
And 6th, yeah. So, there's still opportunities for other kids with Wickedy.
Yeah, and it is multidisciplinary too, so it might come from another class.
my memory is this board engaged with Lori in moving forward a gifted and talented division for our achievers, recognizing all of what you've said. And so I wholeheartedly support opportunities in language arts, in across the field, in our sciences, to take children who are at that glass ceiling and remove it. We have done that with our high school students being able to take courses at BU. This is a natural evolution to support the growth of young people who are ready, and as long as it can be part of an ongoing and supportive system, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I think, I love that saying, I stole it from somebody's PowerPoint, but you know, when we know better, we have to do better. And I think this cohort recognizes you've got a really good policy in place for identifying advanced learners. But if we don't have programming to go with the identification, it's kind of, you know, we need a little more programming to kind of fit their needs.
One last thing I would say is that, you know, with state statute, this could be a point of attraction for other families outside of the district to participate in our coursework, which could be a revenue generator too down the road.
Thank you.
But it's a good way to go.
Laura, you mentioned that you had the cost covered as far as the budget.
Yes.
I noticed a couple of them are sort of basically tech courses.
Yep.
Health and some of the tech ed departments is taking over some of that over.
Well, actually, good question, Gary. So the different career and tech ed courses that are listed here, one is for the agricultural content area, landscape and golf course management would be an adjustment to a current course, so it's not an additional course. It's just changing a little bit of the curriculum and allowing our students to earn Southwest Tech College credit, so that would be a benefit to students and families. Jenna's here, she proposed that course, and it wouldn't change her course load, just more preparation for this new course.
But Gary, we can address that question when we get into the budget discussion, because that is an item that we want to look at.
Yeah, and the same would be true for the other career and tech ed course, which is Computers and Society. That's just a replacement for 2 courses right now, so it's blending the 2 together and giving our students an opportunity to earn Microsoft Office Specialist certifications. That would be a benefit of doing that.
Laura, you had a couple of emails on the district ambulance service often.
Yes.
Can you clarify the cost for me on this?
Sure. So just moving across, there's no additional staffing because, again, the Baraboo District Ambulance Services will provide the instructor. Textbooks, there are specific textbooks that we need to purchase to be, for the certification. The District Ambulance Service met with Dr. Bartman, and she's in need of new anatomy and physiology textbooks, so they collaborated and said we could probably purchase the same textbooks, and that would reduce that cost. That would be if we had 30 kids participate. We may only have 10 kids participate, so $10,000 would be the most we would spend on those textbooks to have a classroom set. If we only have 10 kids participate, it would be a lot less than that. The curriculum hours are part of the curriculum budget, $400. Then initially the cost per student to take the coursework and do the certifications was $1,200. Because of the collaboration, we can drop that cost down to $650, so almost half for each student to participate. And we would treat that much like we treat like a youth options in terms of paying that tuition for students. And again, that can be absorbed by the curriculum budget and still make reductions in the budget for the curriculum budget. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does.
And then,
the investment in textbooks isn't just a per annum cost.
Right.
Because those are going to last.
For a long time, right. And then also, I just want to highlight again, because this is a unique program in the state of Wisconsin, supported by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, there's a grant process that we can apply for, which may reduce all of the costs. We're really fortunate to get that grant.
And who is the grant through?
It's my understanding it's through the Wisconsin Department of Health Services.
Okay.
So how many course overloads are we going to have here when this gets going? How many overloads we're going to start paying the teachers?
Mr. Bilston, are you going to
Well,
have
the
any course
scheduling is
overloads?
about to begin in December, and the idea behind
Our examination of our courses every year is to try to avoid that as much as possible. But any year, any given time, it's really going to depend on our enrollments ultimately and our staffing. So
this is really something, we don't know how many course overloads we're gonna have to pay with this proposal.
No, I don't anticipate any course overloads as a result of this particular proposal. But again, the overall overload picture from the building will be determined once we have all of our enrollments and we look at all of our staffing and how it all plays out that way.
Well, you know, what I don't understand is that it seems like the next couple of years, just to start off the year, we're gonna be $600,000 or $800,000 in the hole. Am I right or wrong, Sean? Something to that effect. So now we're talking about cutting personal days, cutting some subjects, and then you come out with 12 new courses. I don't get it.
It's part of the curriculum review process, and it's a worthy question that you're asking. But I think it's also important to keep in mind we want to have relevant and engaging coursework for our students so that we have a viable institution that attracts families to our system. And so, yes, we're making some tough decisions about the budget. And with that, there's been decisions around these courses that supports our current budget situation.
But not every course offering survives either.
Right, right.
You know, depending on enrollment, you might get 4 kids that choose a class.
Right, that's a good point.
It's going to get dropped.
So as part of the curriculum review process, there are certain courses that become less attractive or not really relevant for our students in terms of 21st century skills or needs. And so our teachers are always tasked with, what are we currently teaching? Is it really best meeting the needs of kids? Do we need to develop something that would be better? And with that process of implementing new courses, other courses are dropped. And we just evolve with our instruction.
I think we should also note that the state aid to education has been reduced significantly, and that puts a burden on local school districts, and Baraboo faces that challenge day in and day out to try to take reduced state aid and yet maintain the excellence and the opportunities that we provide to our students. If you don't like that picture, then you need to look at the legislature.
All right, well, we're not in the legislature right now. And you and I will certainly both talk to the legislature, I'm sure, in the upcoming, we're both Republican and Democrat elect. But the one that I'd like to kind of just talk a little bit more about, and this is a new offering, is this integrated chemistry and physics. So is this like a half chemistry, half physics, or, I know integrated sounds like integrated.
It's here, that's where there she is. I couldn't see
Yay.
right there.
Yeah, I like the name, but what is it actually?
Sure, Karen's here, and just to help you, Karen created a scope and sequence to talk about this.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Actually, Michelle Bartman did. She created
It's a good
diagram. We all
graph.
put
How many
together how to
students?
do it, but
Thank you.
she's the one that put it all together in the drawing. So the integrated chemistry and physics would show how the two are interconnected. It wouldn't be chemistry one semester, physics the next. It would show how things actually are in the real world to help kids see those connections. So what kids would take biology their freshman year, and then their sophomore year they could either take chemistry, followed by physics the next year, and hopefully earth science the year after that. We'll get to that next year. Or instead of taking a year of chemistry and a year of physics, they could take this integrated chemistry and physics, which would get all of the standards for the next generation science standards in one course.
Two
so that-
semesters.
It would be 2 semesters, but it wouldn't be one chemistry,
Right,
one
I
physics. It would be
In
both of them. Both.
generally in their junior year that they would
It would
take
be their sophomore year.
They would be their sophomore year.
Right.
Boy, I wish they'd had this one. I was,
Same here.
because I did figure out how they work together. I still
Yeah,
don't.
oh, I know. And that's what I love about the next generation science standards is we make those connections to show how everything works in the world. We help kids to understand that.
So
not
if they
separate
take
silos.
the integrated class in their sophomore year, then they could take earth science if they wanted in their junior year.
Right.
And there would not be a course for them in their senior year because these are the kids who have made that decision to kind of get it done without
Right.
that
There are
fourth
plenty
course.
of electives they could take too, also, but those would be the 3 required ones that they could use to then fulfill their 3 science
And when
requirements.
Karen's saying elective, she's meaning science elective.
Science
I understand.
electives, that's what I meant.
They need to take 3 years now.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's a good concept, I mean, again, but then we also have the students who probably want to go in the more advanced track.
Correct.
But would that even make sense to do like a 2-year integrated chemistry physics for those who want to say, I want that advanced versus a year of chemistry and a year of physics? That's maybe,
So to
we're not talking
spread it out
this
over
next
the whole-
year, but maybe
Right.
a way
And
to
we can
work
look at that,
Yeah.
that kind of
We have
option too.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
One
Karen.
problem we get in is license certification there. We can use a 601 license for people that are teaching this course because it's not a separate physics, separate chemistry.
Okay.
So anybody with
There's
broad
some
field
issues
can
there,
teach it.
Other issues that we're-
Actually, that's what I was getting at. We do have instructors who are prepared
Right,
to teach
we have
this.
enough now, and I've also checked with UW system, and this would count for what their credits that it takes to get into that system, to any of the colleges in the system.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Oh,
Karen.
oh. Yeah, I just have
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, I kind of have a problem with, like, reduce, it says here, reduce emergency days from 5 to 3, reduce personal days from 2 to 1. You're going to eliminate food service at the Civic Center. And supposedly we have a financial problem. Now we turn around and start 12 new courses. I don't get it.
You know, the courses are, the staff really worked hard on looking and examining those areas that we needed to add courses or revise courses based on our student needs. For example, in math, students now coming through Bearwood High School have to have three credits of math for graduation. And so the track beforehand was algebra, geometry, algebra 2. And so these 2 new course proposals in the area of math provide some alternatives to Algebra 2, which really is just being responsive to the new credit requirements for graduation and the needs of the students. Similar to, you know, the English 9 course for acceleration needs for our students. We could look at our competency-based diploma. You know, there's just another, I think, response to students that are at risk in our district that we need to provide some, you know, alternative pathways to a diploma. The staff really spent a lot of time looking at where those needs are, you know, in terms of our students, and even with some of the ones that have been revised, as Lori has already articulated, and some of the other staff. But, you know, I do just want to give credit to the staff that has spent a lot of time in thinking through this and having conversations about, you know, how we need to adjust our offerings to meet, you know, the changing needs of our students in our current world.
Excuse me, I just want to say one thing. We don't really know if that's only going to cost us $56,000, do we?
It's
This
gonna
might cost us
34.
$75,000, huh?
That's, you're looking at.
24 new courses, total cost.
That was-
That's last year.
$56,000.
That was what we brought forward last year. So this year, just to be clear, it's not 12 courses, it's 9 courses. And the total cost is $34,485, which is a little over $20,000 reduction compared to last school year's new courses.
And Lori, that's coming from the curriculum budget that's already in
coming from the curriculum budget
place.
that has a line item for new courses. And I'm also proposing to reduce the curriculum budget another $50,000.
So where does the curriculum budget come from? Taxpayers?
It's the district's curriculum budget.
And that comes from the taxpayers.
The whole budget comes from the
Yes.
taxpayers, yes.
But it's a regular line item.
Right.
But a clarification, Mr. Bilston, that is, if you look at the financial algebra, that's an addition, as it reads here, additional course, but what it would actually end up meaning, if I understand it, is instead of, say, 4 offerings of algebra 2 to 80 students or 120 students, you might have 3 algebra 2s and 1 financial algebra to those same 120 students. So it's not an additional course, it's a new course, but it is filling, it's an elective that they might choose one over the other. Correct?
And it also happens to meet the state requirement for us to have financial literacy graduation credit. And so, you know, that's another feather in I think, the students' cap for them to be able to use that requirement through that course as well. So just trying to make sure that, you know, we're meeting the needs and exactly differentiating those needs as the students get older and are moving through their math coursework.
This is probably one I could have used in high school too.
And it's hard to, I agree with that, it's hard to separate this from the budget discussion, but I think as we go through that and Jeff highlights the areas and some of the assumptions that have been made, there are some areas in there that, you know, we're anticipating the worst case scenario, no increase in state aid and no recurring exemptions that we had this year and items like that. So he's going to go through those, and I think it'll paint a clearer picture of that budget. Even though you've had that document to review, I think it warrants some further discussion.
Any further questions?
I would make a motion to approve the new courses.
I'll second that.
Having a motion by Riley, seconded by Meering. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Note Mr. Mortimer's opposition. The new course is thus approved. Brings us to personnel recommendations, of which I am not aware of any. So we can skip to new business. Approval of the receipts and disbursements. Chair of Finance, Mr. McNevin.
We met, we reviewed the bills, and I move to approve.
I was second.
Having a motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Brings us to B, under new business, the 2015-16 budget discussion and possible action on the 2015-16 budgetary expenditures. Everybody's had in their board info packet for the last week or so the highlights, lowlights, however you want to look at them.
Yeah.
And we want to start by saying that, you know, this is the start of the conversation in our annual budget process and looking at where we're at. And to do that at this point, we have to make some assumptions with funding and expenditures. But we wanted to come forward with some possibilities for the board to discuss and consider. You know, we're not asking the board to make a sweep here. I think our administrative team feels pretty strongly that we want to keep personal days for our staff intact, if possible. And so tonight, Jeff is going to highlight just a few items that we want to have a deeper discussion on, and as well as open it up to the board. If there's other areas that you want us to take a look at in terms of expenditures, we'd be happy to do that and cost that out. So this is kind of the work of many months of looking at all areas of expenditures and coming forward with some possibilities.
All right, so again, I just want to highlight that this is a preliminary discussion. If you are looking at the sheet or if you have it on your iPad, in red are those items that have a negative effect on the deficit. Those items in white or yellow, those would have a positive impact on our budget. So just starting at line 1, budget deficit to begin the year. Our deficit for 14-15 currently sits at just about $187,000. Included in that $187,000 number was additional revenue through the revenue limit formula. Crystal mentioned some non-recurring exemptions. That's the hold harmless exemption and the declining enrollment exemption. Those two exemptions total just over $271,000. Those two exemptions are coming off the books to begin next year. So where you see in the third column over a negative amount of $457,832, that is taking this current deficit budget that we're currently in, adding on those two exemptions that are non-recurring that are going to go away. So that's basically our starting point. That's our base. Approved last meeting or 2 meetings ago was the post-retirement benefit changes. Those changes brought about some short-term additional costs to the tune of about $200,000. We know those are costs that are increasing, so that's why they're included there.
And I believe, Jeff, that increase is for 4 years?
Yeah, 4 to 5 years.
And then the district starts to realize savings from the changes that you made.
Yep. It's short-term expenditures to achieve some long-term savings, some exponentially increased long-term savings. Row 3 and 4 discuss the health insurance and dental insurance benefit increases or premium increases that we expect to have. Those are estimates. Our health insurance is capped at 5%. I think it's a fairly safe assumption to assume that we're going to have a 5% increase, but who knows, maybe that'll go down. But if it is a 5% increase, there's your additional cost. Dental insurance, we're projecting to have a fairly significant increase there, but you'll note that even an 8% increase only has a $12,000 impact on our budget. And then the final number I added in there, just looking at this first chunk of the budget that I wanted to go through, was to add a tech ed teacher at the high school. I think, Ed, you mentioned overloads. We currently have some pretty significant overloads at in the high school tech ed department. If we were able to basically remove those overloads and have all the cost savings that would go along with that, we could add a new tech ed teacher, and it would basically only cost the district, again, estimate, around $12,000. So to add a new teacher, that's why I threw it in there as an assumption that we might carry on with that thought. So that's where in row 7, that brings us to the deficit to begin next year of $877,540. So this is where the administrative team sat down and really began the discussion of, hey, what items could we start looking at to have some potential cost savings? This list was longer, and as the administrative team began discussions, we decided to eliminate some items that we didn't feel were consistent with district priorities and district goals. What you see here in rows 8, and if you flip the page to row 25, is just a starting point to really think about some ways that we could capture some cost savings within the district. Rows 10, 14, and 19, highlighted in yellow, that's really the 3 items that we want to discuss tonight, because those 3 items have an impact on course registration that we'll be getting in January at the high school. So with that, I'm going to kind of fast forward past row 25 and go to row 26, where it says revised budget balance. I just want to make sure I have my number correct here. If we did all of these, if we proceeded with all these cost savings measures, it would total $936,090. If you deducted that from the budget deficit to begin the year, we would have a surplus of $58,550. And again, that's if we did everything on this sheet. So moving forward, if you're looking at that second page, row 26 is where I have that revised budget balance, but we also have some other items that could potentially be increases to our deficit. Those being fund balance replenishment, a new teacher compensation system, salary increases for other employee groups, and an increase to the technology budget. And I just want to discuss those 4 items really quickly. Just looking at our board policy 665 states the board shall strive to maintain a general fund operating reserve of approximately 15% of the district's general fund operating budget, for the subsequent fiscal year. We're currently in that 9 to 10% range. So at some point, if we want to align ourselves with board policy, that has to be a line item that should be considered. The board has also made a commitment to teachers for the new teacher compensation system. I've put in a number of $345,000. That's an estimate. That's assuming all teachers move vertically and some teachers move either horizontally or vertically with professional development that occurs. Included in that is also the increase in WRS and FICA costs that would go along with that movement. Salary increases for other groups. This would be your special ed aides, library assistants, administration, all the other employee groups that we have. I basically took the salaries and increased it by 2%, a modest CPI increase as well as salary advancement. Finally, the increase to the technology budget, we threw in a number there of $100,000. That's actually significantly less than what's requested to sustain the technology budget. So it's just something that should be mentioned and brought forward here. So if we took that revised budget balance of $58,550 and then deducted these 4 rows of other items that are potentially going to pop up for us, that puts our budget deficit back at $606,450. Crystal mentioned this is all put together with a $0 increase from the state. We won't know that number until the governor releases his budget in February or March, whenever that occurs. It's also assuming that we do not have any type of enrollment exemption. It's also assuming that our enrollment doesn't bounce back and go up. So if our enrollment did go down, we would qualify for another exemption. If our enrollment went back up, we would capture more dollars from more students. So where Crystal mentioned that this is kind of worst case scenario, she's right on. This is the worst case scenario, but it's something we should be prepared for and something we should be thinking about.
There's another assumption too in row 8. When we look at estimated retirements, we have 29 teachers eligible. Again, the timeline for that is February 1st, so we'll know by then. And so that could range from the 10 that we've estimated to 29. And so that ranges from 275,000 to 580,000. So that's another chunk. I have received 2 initial retirement resignations so far. But again, we're holding some informational sessions next week. Is that next week already? And so, you know, as that timeline progresses, we'll have a better idea of that number as well.
I have a question on that point right there. I mean, you know, it's like we're almost counting on teachers retiring, which is not necessarily a good way to be. And going forward, at some point, we are not going to have this huge gap of teachers that are retiring. So budgetarily, moving forward, it might save us a little bit this year, but a year or 2 down the road, that's certainly something that we can help.
Right, and I think the district and board has a commitment to the new teacher compensation model that we've developed. We're just in our first year, so again, it's really hard to predict what those increases will exactly be. The committee knows that we may need to go back and we may need to adjust that with what those increases are at some point, you know. So again, this is kind of looking at everything, making some assumptions. We're happy to look at other areas. These are not, you know, this is not a packaged administrative recommendation by any means. These are just options for the board to consider. We would like to have additional conversation though on items 10, 14, and 19. And maybe we want to start with 14, Lori?
That's the literacy coach reduction. So one of the things that we've listed as a possible consideration is a reduction in literacy coach, which is really not a coach, it's a reading specialist working with our parochial sites at a 0.4 FTE. We're still obligated as a school district to provide those services. It would just mean that if we made that reduction, one of our internal literacy coaches would spend a part of their time serving the parochial schools and part of our time here in district. So it would be a reduction to the FTE as a team here in the district.
We could also split, we have 3 parochial schools to service. We could also divide those up instead of having them together as one lump.
But in the past,
How many coaches do you have right now?
we currently have, well, we have 9 FTE of coaches, and we have 1 person that has a reading specialist license or reading teacher license serving as an interventionist.
So you're going from 9 FTEs to 8.6.
Correct. One of the reasons we're putting this as a possible consideration is we've had a carryover in federal funds, Title I, over the past few years. We've gotten to a point where this school year we've had to utilize all of our carryover funds. So we will not have carryover funds for the 15-16 school year. So that's why we're putting this on. We will have to use more of our district funds to support the Title I funds to support our activity.
And literacy is one of our
Priority areas.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, if it's one of your priority areas, why are we cutting?
There's a lot of things that are priority areas that I don't want cut.
Well, I think, again, this is a service that we provide to the parochial schools.
Do we have to do that by statute?
We have to, and it's calculated, the amount is calculated by the Department of Public Instruction. And we feel that with the literacy coaches that we have in place, that we can still meet that requirement and have the reduction of the .4, which is about $18,000.
Now, who's going to do her duties when this part-time position is cut? Who's going to do her duties when she's?
Right, we have 3 parochial schools, so we're probably going to split those up. And so, one might serve one school 2 hours twice a week. That's the amount of time. So we feel that with some scheduling changes, we can make some adjustments with the literacy coaches we have in place.
So then when she goes to parochial school for 2 hours, who does her work from where she comes from?
Well, they're not blocked in for instruction necessarily the entire time. There's coaching time built in, there's assessment time. So it doesn't look like a traditional classroom teacher where they have students in front of them all of the time. However, that is the method that we use at the parochial schools, working directly with the students.
Is there a possibility this is one of those overloads?
No.
Crystal, would be, going back to new courses there, several of your big expenditures are overloads for tech ed. Is there some of these students that have the big enrollment there would be convinced or would want to take some of the other technical courses or the emergency med or anything like that? And same with food service with the financial algebra, where that would take the load off the numbers that are rolling in them courses and spread it back over to your new courses.
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, if you remember, over the last 2 years, our numbers have gone from 250 to 300 to 650. So that's a lot of students to absorb, and we're really taxing those current tech ed teachers where, 3 of them have overloads right now? And, I mean, we're talking no time in the day at all. And so I think some of those students may migrate to other offerings, but...
Or like food service, like the med tech, maybe?
They're all different areas.
Yeah,
The tech ed areas that we're looking on are very heavy into, welding and manufacturing and construction and those kinds of areas where, the EMT is in the health field and food service is a separate field in and of itself. So there's a possibility, but we're working hard with our business partners or our manufacturing partners in town, and the more parents and students understand the opportunities that are available to prepare those kids for careers in the workplace, I don't think we're going to see that number drop. And I don't know, we have counselors here tonight, I don't know.
Can we go to 10 now?
Our numbers in tech ed, as Dr. Ritzenpowler indicated, have grown just exponentially over the years. And those overloads are pretty significant, and they're working around the clock. And I don't anticipate those enrollments to change. I don't think any of us do going into this year.
Well, we get some of these people in these 9 new courses.
Yes.
They got to come from somewhere.
Right.
But like you told me before, well,
Yeah.
some of these go on, they'll drop some other ones. I just thought maybe just
Mhm.
even places off,
And that's something that, is part of the course sign-up process, is to make sure that we are making, the new courses, apparent to the students, but also some coaching along the way through our student services and in other ways that we can make sure that students are being shown some of the different opportunities that are going to be new this year. And so sometimes it does take a little while for some of these new courses to take off.
What?
And are there any more questions on that piece? Otherwise, we'll move to item 10 like Ed requested. I want to start by having Jeff do a breakdown of the estimated reduction in that area.
Yeah, how I arrived at the $100,000 number for the food service class would be $84,061 in salary benefits, $10,000 for transportation. We currently provide busing from the high school over to the Civic Center and back. And they have a food budget item of $5,000. So you add those up, that's how we arrive at $100,000 for that program.
How much does, I thought Cisco donated a lot of this.
Cisco pays the rent.
Huh?
Cisco pays the rent. In terms of the food, I don't know of any arrangement regarding the food.
And, we realize this item has come before the board before, and if the board chooses, we just need some direction at this point because of registration occurring.
How many students are currently in it?
23.
And we've seen a reduction for whatever reasons, because they didn't know if they were going to be able to proceed through the, deeply, through more years in the program, for numerous reasons. Where were the numbers 2 years ago? Is it substantially more?
Well, in the food service class at the Civic Center, I believe those numbers are probably closer to 30 in years past. This year, we currently have 24 registered.
Well, and as Lori stated, we'd like to keep it all. We'd like to offer everything to kids. The board has some tough decisions to make here, and it's really an exercise in prioritizing what the district's needs are at this time. So
we went through 3, 4, 5 recruitment processes to fill that vacancy. And we filled it with somebody with a temporary license, correct?
Emergency license.
Emergency license.
And so in order to secure a license, that person has to enroll in coursework and go through that process.
Has that been done?
No.
No. So we would be looking at another recruitment process to try to find that spot again.
Why don't we take the initiative and go to one of these colleges that teaches culinary or whatever it is, and start recruiting right away? Didn't I just see in the Sunday paper where MATC is spending $5.2 million
on a new culinary, yeah. And we've approached all of the schools that we know have this degree program. We've reached out to people that we know in higher ed. We have not had any response. This is a tough area to fill. Pardon?
You have to reach further.
Minnesota's reaching into our state now, too, though.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is we're not the only district struggling to find those certified positions. We're competing with a number of school districts this last school year to find a FACE teacher.
Well,
that's why we had so many interviews and so many offers that were rejected.
Well, as you can tell, I'm kind of supportive of the FACE program. I could maybe use some culinary work too when I was younger. But it appears to me, which I don't like to see, but it scares me that I thought next year now we were going to have FACE back in the middle school. Now it's looking like we ain't going to have FACE at the middle school next year, right?
It depends on whether we're going to be able to fill that position.
And so then, if we can't fill that, then all we have left is Mrs. Strutz down at the high school, and nobody at the Civic Center now. And then in a year or two, she's going to be gone, because I've got a feeling that people aren't going to be taking this FACE program because it's not offered at the middle school where it should be started when they're younger, I would assume, I think, in my opinion. And pretty soon we're going to be without anything like that.
Are there, Lori, 2 or 3 certification programs in the state for this?
2,
Stout
and
and Stevens Point, and they're seeing declining enrollment as well, which is confusing because, tourism, food industry, you would not think it would go that direction.
On this line item, I'm with Ed too, that I'd hate to see us narrow any of our programming opportunities opportunities, especially in family and consumer ed, and especially like Ed said, starting at middle school. That's where it all begins. I'm not saying we'll be successful necessarily in our endeavors, because I watched that struggle firsthand last year over and over.
Yeah.
But I think that at least I would like to keep it a board priority to keep that middle school programming and the continuation of that programming through the high school. It's a critical area for a lot of kids.
I would have to support that as well, and in fact, I talked to two chefs in the culinary program at MATC this weekend, sat with them at a trade show for 2 hours on Saturday and 2 hours on Sunday, and they tell me that there's interest amongst the faculty there. Now, none of that came through for you last year, and I can't say that it's going to come through.
Well, and some
either.
of those individuals don't have the certification that we're required to have in our high school.
That's correct,
Yeah.
but with the emergency opportunity,
right.
One of the chefs told me that he believed that there would be someone that he could identify that would be interested in pursuing the certification as well. Now, you know, that doesn't mean that they're going to want to drive up to Baraboo. That doesn't mean that they have that kind of time. However, I can tell you that they're all, the entire faculty in that program has a real concern that while the construction for the new kitchen area, the new cafeteria, while all of this is taking place, while they're closed down, in some ways, you know, to a certain percentage, they're going to have some time on their hands. They're not going to be teaching as much over the next year.
Well, they should be worried about having a $5.1 million facility with no feeder programs to get these students.
I think they are. So I guess I'd like to see us pursue this more before we make a decision to cut.
Well, one of the things, and again, it may not be on here, but it is on there, isn't it? I mean, when we start talking about eliminating the middle school food service program, we currently have an academic program, correct?
Right, and that was issues of a one-year response to the fact that Sue moved down to the high school this year. Now, there hasn't been any talk about eliminating FCS permanently at the middle school. However, we got to keep in mind that we have a construction project ready to come pretty soon, and somebody's going to start asking me about what kind of outlets I want on that wall.
Right, you're moving your FCS program from the front door to the office area. You're flipping the office out front. Clearly, here's an opportunity for us to build that family and consumer ed area exactly the way we want it. I mean,
And that's exactly true if we can get the right person in that program.
But we've been beating our head on that wall, and again, I mean, I'm in the CESA board, and I haven't been just having that conversation here. We have that conversation at our board members from all over the area, and so it's not like it's just us who's having a problem. Everybody's having that problem, and you know, but in the meantime, we've had a one-year program. Is that just a one-year program, or is that something that could be an ongoing program that could greatly benefit all of our students moving forward in many other academic areas? And so, I mean, that's something I think we have to do, is saying, yes, you know, I want to service all our kids, but we have to also remember the priority of the greater majority too, all students, and to negatively impact all of the students. So I say, okay, we have this great program, but we're going to take that away because we're going to go back to the FCE. I think that's what we have to also decide. Absolutely.
Sure.
I just want to point out that our family and consumer science enrollments do remain high overall over the last 2 years. We had over went from about 400 enrollments 2 years ago to over 750 last year to a little over 650 this year. The enrollments do remain high in our family and consumer science areas here at the high school. Our teacher who teaches food service at the Civic Center does come back to the high school and teaches 2 sections of creative foods in the afternoon.
But
This
sitting
isn't
here in the-
necessary, I guess my comments of support are for the entire program,
Yeah.
from middle school.
I'm just giving you the
And
facts here.
whether or not that takes place at the Civic Center or inside these walls, it isn't as critical to me as the endorsement from the board that we feel that this is a track that is worthy of continuation and initiation starting at middle school.
I think it's worthy of continuation because of where Baraboo sits in the state. Here we are, 10 miles from the Dells, and looking to increase our own tourism and hospitality industry here. And it's a program that is career-ready for these students. And, you know, I think the legislature wants us to be doing that.
Well, you know, I agree with Sean, I agree with John, and I think as a board, we have got to make up our mind what you're gonna do with that program at the middle school, because there's 20 or 30 sewing machines up there, and 4 or 5 sinks or stoves and everything else. You're gonna have to, if we're gonna continue faith at the middle school, you better figure it out, or we better figure it out, so you know how to build that room.
Absolutely.
Well, right now, that's how it's designed. And so unless the architects or engineers hear differently from us, that planning is already taking
I
place for
haven't
that.
seen any plans, so I don't know.
Do we have a timetable when, if we were to say we're going one way or the other?
If we were not to go with the phase program for next year, but there would be the potential of a STEM classroom or something like that, they would bring the plumbing and the electrical up to the walls and they would cap it there. So that if it was used for a different reason in the future, they would be able to just go from there. And it would be on the perimeter walls anyway.
Do you think that if we don't reinvent this FACE program, what do you want to call it, you think eventually we aren't going to have any interest in it?
You mean if we don't
quit- if we
continue
quit
at the middle
offering it?
school? I think that's where, middle school is the age where kids explore those areas,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah,
yes.
I agree, Ed. I mean, if you eliminate that at the middle school, it'll become a sampling at the high school instead of a direction
Can
or
I,
a passion.
could I entertain a motion to the board's support for the continuation of the food service FACE program, middle school through the high school, including the Civic Center, so that we can,
Move on to the next item.
yeah, so that there's some
If that's your motion, I'll second it.
motion by Mr.
Sure,
McNevin,
I'll
seconded by
take that.
Mr. Mortimer. Any more further discussion?
In reverse order.
Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye. Aye.
No.
Oh, no, I didn't oppose, I'm sorry. I was
Just
reading.
right, just a creature of habit.
You made the motion, didn't you?
Can I move?
I was reading. I don't oppose.
We all expected you to vote no anyway.
For clarification, the 2 votes of opposition were Mr. Cummings and Mr. Mearing.
Okay. Can we get a motion to?
Can we, yeah, it would entertain a motion to reduce the literacy coaches by .4 FTE as presented.
I don't move for that, sadly.
Who was the second?
I'll sadly second.
Mearing, Riley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Are you sure this time?
Yes, I'm sure.
Just checking.
I'd like to make a motion to approve all of the expenses that are connected to reductions through attrition.
Well, I don't think we need action on the rest.
I may advise the board to hold off on the other areas until February 1st, when
When you
we
get-
have a better idea of the state funding and some of the other variables that we're looking at. So the only other one that we need to really talk about in depth tonight is the driver's ed program. And I think Jeff provided an explanation to you about how those how the accounting for that under Fund 10 now needs to be moved to our general operational fund. DPI is tightening up on that because it's a student program. It's available to our kids during the day, and it's a accredited program for graduation. There are other ways that we can continue to provide that in our community. And I don't know, Glenn or Jeff, if you want to talk about that?
There is, I believe Lori, you and I discussed today, there is one driver's ed company in Baraboo providing
Correct.
services. We've also reached out to CISA 2, who would be willing to basically come in and offer that program. If we decided to go in that direction, it would be a program where we would coordinate with them. They would still teach it out of our school.
And they
Might-
would use the
might be
current-
able to use our staff.
current instructor.
Yep.
Is there really any savings? I mean, I'm in a CISA, we charge for services.
They don't, the charge isn't passed on to the district.
We basically provide them a room.
A room
Yeah.
and
Well,
then the students pay for.
Is there a
to
greater
use it.
is there a greater cost to our students? In other words, have we escalated the cost of the program but just transferred it off to our students? You know, that was always.
I think it was about the same, but then we figured that last year, private.
Yeah.
and-
It's within
And I think it will become more competitive.
It's about the same.
I mean, you'll see other programs potentially pop up. The other thing is, you know, we don't, I have a meeting with Dave Crane tomorrow, and we don't know what Dave's intentions are in terms of retirement either. And so, you know, again, there's some of those unknowns. But there are other options available to continue to offer that.
As a part of the facilities planning, isn't that driver's area that is currently being used by GLW cited to be reconfigured for more safety for ingress and outgress anyway?
That was the initial intent, yes.
I was thinking there were 2 driver's ed schools around here.
There are.
There's
CISA
the
2
Reedsburg.
operates one out of Sauk right now, and there's one out of Reedsburg.
What's the one down here, Rio's or whatever?
Yep, Rio's driving school.
But
here in Fairview.
CISA 5 doesn't offer any. CISA 2 would like to operate a program in Baraboo, and they prefer to use the school staff, the current driver instructors.
I would think a retired Mason could teach quite a few.
I could teach you a couple things, yeah. He might as well start right up behind the school.
Well, again, if the board chooses not to go that direction, we'll be adding 61,000 into our Fund 10.
Well, isn't there another angle to the Fund 10, Fund 80 angle in that what percentage of driver's ed, Jeff, right now is tagged to Fund 80? What dollar figure?
The entire dollar figure is in Fund 80. The amount of our levy is a little over $40,000 is tagged to the levy.
Okay, so my understanding is that even though it shows right here that there is a cost savings of $61,000, it's potentially a lot more than that because at some point.
Well, we could take some of our current Fund 10 costs and shift into Fund 80. Costs that are eligible, such as, we looked at a shuttle bus for, what was that for, Kids Stop? Or
Boys
was
and
that
Girls
for
Club.
Boys and Girls Club?
So last year, expenditures for driver's ed were a little over 120,000. Student fee revenues were 60,000. That's where the levy came in, made up the difference. That levy goes away, now you just have an expenditure of 120 grand, and you have 60,000 in student fees. That $60,000 expense is being shifted into our general fund. It's not being covered by the levy anymore. So that's where, if you have, eliminate the program, you would realize $60,000 in cost savings. And what Krista was mentioning, we do have the opportunity to take costs that we're currently paying for out of Fund 10, shift them into 80, and create those dollars then being levied for outside of our general fund.
Well, anything that can legitimately go into Fund 80, I think we should make that effort, make
Oh,
that transfer. I'll show you my naivete here, I guess, about Fund 80, and that is, as I understand it, those need to be expenditures that are non-academic, when it's a program that is offered only to Baraboo School District students, we cannot use Fund 80. Now, here's my naivete. What if we allowed people, community members, who wanted driver's ed training, whether they be immigrants, whether they be people who have become adults without learning to drive? What if we let people take driver's ed who are not Baraboo School District students? Could we do that?
If you offered it at night and did not offer high school credit for it, it could potentially, I don't want to commit to it, but it could potentially still run through our Fund 80. You would also have to find an instructor that's willing to teach at night rather than during the day. So,
Isn't some of that issue too, is like, let's say I got 10 community non-school members, but 90 students, still 90% of it would be.
Oh, so it's based on the.
no, it's not really a proration.
Basically, Mo, if you aren't gonna gain anything because you don't cash flow right now, so if the private does the driver's ed as reasonable as the school.
Yeah,
you know,
why would they
you're-
do that?
You're over budget right now and stuff. The other thing would be on, I was wondering about that, is there part of that in the maintenance, what with simulator and keeping up the driver's ed range and stuff like that? Does that go into the driver's ed budget, or does that go into maintenance?
In terms of the
Transportation
driving
and-
range, that's maintenance, that's not related to driver's ed. The simulator, I would have to double check on that.
I
would
mean, there's
assume that's
transportation
coded.
costs and maintenance on that.
I would assume that's coded to driver's ed, but that is a split cost with Reedsburg. The cost is really minimal on that, so.
Did I understand you right, Jeff, when you said that if we eliminated driver's ed and we eliminated Mr. Crane, that it'd be kind of like even? We'd save that 60,000. Is that what you said?
60,000 would be the savings, yes.
And as I recall, the cost of the student at a private driver's school is about the same as through the school district. Is that
Within
not
like
correct?
$50.
Yeah, we looked at comparables.
What was the utilization there?
What do you mean?
Percentage of the class, say a given class. What
Oh,
percentage
the
does
numbers
private?
enrolled right now? Glenn, do you know?
We have about 90 per semester.
I actually have the numbers here, so for semester one, we have 77 kids, and for semester two, 84 kids, so a total of 161, which is down about 50 from last year.
Down 50?
Mhm.
How come it's down 50? He's
Just
taking
50
private
less
lessons?
My daughter couldn't find,
Some
last year
kids do.
couldn't find a block where she
Right.
They
could
want to
take it.
maximize the academic offerings and they take that at another time.
Is the block system causing that, you think?
Oh,
It affected her, I know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Not familiar with this block with having a kid in concern.
There's quite a bit of flexibility because there's a section, throughout the day. Hard to know why the numbers are down. A variety of factors.
Okay.
There's flexibility, but when they need to take a certain number of credits, she couldn't fit all of course, she was gone for a semester, so maybe that was it. She couldn't get all of her credits in and fit in driver's ed.
There's probably, again, one reason of the many.
Do you need a motion, Kevin?
Yes.
I'll move that we eliminate the driver's ed. Great.
And I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion?
The only discussion at this point is that we need to have you come forward with other options at this point, and so that we can start exploring those options.
I agree.
Okay, having a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, I don't know of any other budget
Well,
issues to
Jeff,
deal with
are there
tonight.
questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. On the change of
Certainly.
benefits as far as personal days and emergency days. can you send us out a memo on how the calculation is made, what the utilization is? How many people were donating those days into our sick bank, right? Aren't those days eligible to go into that bank?
No.
No?
Only sick leave.
Just sick days.
Yeah, I would like
I
some data.
began, just for your information, I began reaching out to other surrounding districts, Reedsburg, Portage, some of the other
Sure,
districts
send
around
it.
us, just to see what they're offering, to see if I can create a link. and-
Yep, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm
But
happy
some
to do
data
that.
would be great.
Yep.
On-
Are there any areas that the board would like us to explore that we haven't documented here?
I just have a concern about eliminating computer lab positions, you know, for young
Yep.
people. I mean, we
Right.
talk about 21st learning, we invest heavily in our technology, still need human beings to guide those little ones, so I would like to see that off the table, but it
And
doesn't
we
have to
have
be done now.
longevity in those positions
Yeah.
and some very skilled people, and
Yep.
that's why we're not asking the board to make a decision on that tonight. Hold off on that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'd like to move to C, which is the acceptance of a donation, an anonymous donation of 2 steel I-beam poles for the baseball field scoreboard. The estimated value of those beams is $990.
I move to accept those beams.
Second.
Motion by Mearing, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion? You don't have any question, Ed?
None, it's hard.
Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to board policies for the second reading. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mearing, and I'm going to suggest that when it comes time to vote on the second readings, that we take 1, 2, 4, and 5 and leave the third until last.
I want to make one slight modification to that, is
What's
that
that?
1 and 2, though they're only having slight changes in the wording, is still, it's the wording based upon 411.2. And I mean, all it is just basically an insertion of a line talking about the gender. And so I would say that we should do 1, 2, and 3 initially, just as we are, but to group them. And then also what I would do for the benefit of the audience is to do a full reading of 411.2. And, but with making, so you want me to make a motion? Does that?
You kind of lost me on
Yeah,
what you
are you
said.
going to do 4 and 5 first, then?
I could do 4 and 5
Yeah,
first
I
if
think
you
that'd
so
be good.
desire. I figured we just do in the order that it's on there, but that's fine. I make a motion to, for the second reading of the open enrollment policy 423 and 852 distribution of non-school sponsored material, that we waive the second reading and approve the 2 policies as written.
I'll second that. We're talking about 4 and 5.
4 and 5.
Yes.
Any further discussion or questions?
Well, I'm going to include some discussion here about policy and what we do as a policy board. Many times, and again, obviously, the large percentage of the people in the audience are here for the discussion of 411.2. But I'm going to include it here, just so we don't get overly burdensome when we get to those policies. Is that the policy board many times will get policies or, you know, things change based upon what happens in our state and or federal government. And those are presented to us. Recently, I was in attendance to the Employment in School seminar in the Wisconsin Dells. It's a state seminar that we have every year. And we did have other administrators at that. And again, one of the things that I said when we went there is that, oh my goodness, well, nothing has changed. The more things stay the same, the more they change, I guess, and that we will continue to have a lot of policies presented to us.
And then that's kind of the purview, so that when we get these policies, and I think we as a board, I think have been, the history has been that we've been very proactive in approaching how we do our policies. We don't, again, we say, you know, if the statutes or if the situation is there, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a mandated state statute. We will say, yeah, we need that policy to, one, support our students. And that's always the important thing. And then when we're supporting those students, we give our administrators and our staff the tools to support our students, versus when they get into those situations, what do we do now? What would, this is something that maybe we need to get to board approval. And then they can work with that situation and to maintain our students' privacy and what's important. The two policies that we have here is the open enrollment policies. We continue to receive changes in state statutes, and that is just an update of what we need to do as a thing to keep up to date. And the distribution of non-school material is just so that we're clear when we are working with whether it's the Boy Scouts or the Boys and Girls Club or whoever group it is, what are the situations and what can they do and when do they need to come forward with us. So those are the two policies. I know, again, it's just to give the overall discussion to the audience and or whoever else is watching online. So.
Well, we have a motion by Mehring, seconded by Riley for 423 and 852. If there isn't any further discussion, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Please go back and revisit what you explained in regards to 370, 377, and 411, because I didn't.
Okay, 370 and 377 will have the cross-reference of 411.2 embedded into it. Because it talks, 377 is our athletic programs, and 370 is our student co-curriculars. So it's just, when we bring policies to the board, it isn't always that there's always going to be a full policy. It could be one or two words, or it could be, in this case, when we have a new policy such as 411.2 transgender student participation, we include those cross-references in our other policies, so that there isn't a question of, oh, does this policy, what are the other ones that it affects?
Doug, why don't you read them, just to read them out loud if they're not too overly long.
The
three right there, 370, 377.
They're long.
They're long.
I would say that the only one that really, that we should, because there isn't that major, the only changes in the 370 and the 377, obviously where the concern is tonight, is there will be wording that talks about gender identity and gender expression. Those are the only words that have changed in 370 and 377. And the cross-reference will include a cross-reference to 411.2, transgender student participation in co-curricular activities. Both of those are the only changes that are made.
And Doug, if I can just put that within context, the words gender identity, gender expression are part of a non-discriminatory clause that we have in a lot of our student board policies. And those words were recommended to be added by legal counsel.
Right, and the other words were just for people.
A person's sex, race, national origin, religion, color, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability or handicap.
There, that's what it is.
Okay, thank you for that additional clarification. With that, I make that motion, and as part of that motion, I'll do a full reading of 411.2.
May I suggest that that reading that you are discussing doing of 411.2 be considered, in fact, the first reading. According to Mr. Frostbin's comments, that in fact that reading was not done aloud in full at the last meeting. I would like to see this, if enacted, be enacted in full propriety, in full knowledge of our community, and so I would agree that we should read 411.2, but I think it should be, I would like to see if we could consider it the first reading.
I'll second it if that's emotional.
Well, I don't know if it's legitimate. I don't know if we can, but if we can, then I would make that
I
motion.
think you could consider it a first reading. Doug, I think you were absent from the last board meeting. You typically read the first readings of the policy. I think that's
Especially
probably why
new-
Uh,
it wasn't
especially new
read.
policies.
And perhaps because I was the only member here at that meeting, perhaps we missed a step. And I apologize if that's the case. But yes, I would move that we read 411.2 in its entirety and it be considered the first.
You ready to read?
I will read it.
I think we have to
Yeah.
vote.
For the first.
I think
No,
we
we
have.
can,
We will-
this is discussion.
No, we
Still-
can.
That was a
We'll have
motion.
a discussion.
Oh, this is still, this. Okay.
Reading is the
The
discussion.
reading, and then we will have some discussion. Transgender student participation in co-curricular activities, 411.2. The school district of Baraboo is committed to the principle that transgender students have opportunities to participate in Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association sponsored athletics. The district shall ensure that all students have access and opportunities to participate in athletics without discrimination based on disability, race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, religion, age, national origin, or ancestry. Policies governing sports participation for transgender students shall be formed by sound medical knowledge and scientific validity. The medical privacy of transgender students should be preserved. The following definitions apply to this policy. 1, transgender means having a gender identity or gender expression that differs from societal expectations based on gender assigned at birth. A, female to male, otherwise known as FTM. Transgender person means one person who was born with a female body but who identifies as a boy or man. B, male to female, MTF. Transgender person means one who was born with a male body but who identifies as a girl or woman. 2, gender identity means an innate sense of one's own gender. 3, gender expression means external appearance, characteristics, or behaviors typically associated with a specific gender. Then there is a privacy statement. Protecting the privacy of transgender student athletes is a priority. All medical information shall be kept confidential in accordance with applicable state, local, and federal privacy laws. All discussions and documentation in each level of the process shall be kept confidential unless the student and family makes a specific request otherwise. And the cross-references, and for this purpose I will read those tonight. 411.2 rule, transgender rule. 370 student co-curricular activities. 377 athletic programs. 411 rule, student discrimination compliant procedures activities code. As an understanding for the audience is that the board does not approve the rules, but the rules have to support the policies. Okay? And that's as the fulfillment of the motion.
Introduced with the policy for first reading. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss just a couple of things here. as we are moving forward with our first reading, is one of the things that was discussed tonight was our strategic planning process. There was a lot of things that were given out, but they didn't discuss entirely the following revised core beliefs. I want to concentrate on the fourth one, safe environment. All individuals have the right to a safe and physical, emotional, and social environment where responsibility and respect are demonstrated daily. I know there's some concerns here, but when we talk about all, it has to be all. It cannot be 50% or more, it can't be 99 or 99.7. It has to be 100%. It has to be each and every student. The policy is there to obviously address some concerns and issues that are involved with it. One thing that I would like to add to that policy, and I'm going to get to that in just a second, is because this is involved with the co-curriculars, we are many times dealing with Title IX, and I believe that should be part of the policy too as far as a cross-reference. I don't know if anybody is there any issues that you see with that? I would like to make that change. Can I make that friendly amendment change, Mo? Will you accept that?
I certainly will, yes.
Okay. Title IX will be added to cross-references.
Is it Gary or Peter?
Gary, would you accept that? Okay. What I'm looking at is, and then two things that, and I would like to read something from you, and then I'll finish with one thing. I know I'm going on here, but that's going to be the case here tonight. And this was a ruling that was issued by the U.S. Department of Education through their Office of Civil Rights, and it was done on April 29th of 2014. And I'm just going to read the one paragraph. The Office of Civil Rights in the U.S. Department of Education today issued official guidance which makes clear that transgender students are protected from discrimination under Title IX. Title IX is a federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in federally funded educational programs and activities. Specifically, the guidance states that Title IX's sex discrimination prohibition extends to claims of discrimination based on gender identity or failure to conform to stereotypical notions of masculinity or femininity, sorry for that, and the Office of Civil Rights accepts such complaints for investigation. What I would like to finish with is this is from the NCAA, and they have and again, they have a lot of experience. It's a really good guide that they have regarding their policies and also procedures. It's from the NCAA, Inclusion of Transgender Student Athletes, and again, this was adopted in 2011. And it's talking about establishing policy and why we need policies such as this. When diversity values are explicit, athletic departments, institutions, state and national governing organizations are in a position to develop specific policy statements that reflect a commitment to these values. These policy statements, if followed, protect schools, administrators, student athletes, and coaches from litigation and other negative consequences. Coaches should know that they may have a transgender student athlete on their teams and should be equipped to make that experience a positive one for the athlete and teammates. Parents should communicate the importance of these values in meetings with prospective coaches and athletics administrators. Student athletes can discuss these values with new team members and in public speaking opportunities. So, and I would like to make one other statement regarding the male to female thing, is that the WIA and the NCAA all talk about hormone suppressor therapy.
is that it has to be implemented, it has to be in place for a year. This is all part of the approval process for allowing the athlete to switch. I knew an athlete, a female athlete, and she had that concern too. And I sent her the policy, where she read the policy, she read the rule, and she looked at it and said, this makes sense. And it makes sense, and it's making this an all-inclusive type of thing where we are going to respect all of our students and all of their needs and all of what we need to do to support them. So that's my input at this point.
I want to clarify that due to the fact that 411.2, which was motioned for first reading, is tied to 370 and 377, that those would, and we can do it after this, but my assumption is we should table those so that they will then coincide when we do the second reading for 411.1.
Table or?
Table for second
Table
reading.
those two, but I don't mean, we're in this discussion, I just want to make sure that we go back to that.
We go back. We're going to have a separate one for each one of those, or?
No, just a separate.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Any other board members wish to comment, questions?
Do we have a motion for that, those three?
We have a motion and a second for 411.2 for the first reading. That's what we're in right now. We have not voted on that yet, so we're still discussing that.
Well, I think we've all seen and heard people talking tonight, and I have to agree that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think we should have, I think we should table that 411.2, the transgender student participation, and maybe have a forum or have further discussions with maybe the board and with the community, because it appears to me that the community is not really happy with 411.2, and I don't think it would hurt if we would table that for further discussion with whomever. That's my comment.
Okay.
Kevin, can I, tell me if I'm out of line, but can I make a statement or suggestion about the policy too? And Doug hit it on the head, you know, this is coming down from the federal government, Department of Education, so it's not a matter of us, it's not a decision to us whether we should allow transgender students or not. The question that we have to address is how are we going to accommodate them so that if a student comes in tomorrow, and that's, you know, the Title IX decision was not, that's not just about athletics, nor is it just about high school. That refers to all of our students in all of our buildings. So we could have a student, any of our principals could have a student walk in tomorrow, identify themselves as a transgender student, and then now we're left without guidance. So I think the purpose and benefit of a policy is to protect all students, not just the transgender students, but all the students. And because of that, I would recommend that we include the language that defines, you know, the procedures of how do you identify the transgender student. The WIA has language that
Which that's part of the rule.
Yeah.
That was, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, since you didn't read it, I didn't know.
I'm sorry, it is.
So
It supports the policy.
yeah, so that's good, because I think that, you know, hopefully would help, you know, ease some of the very valid concerns that were brought up tonight of, if my child is not a transgender student, what prevents a student from just coming in tomorrow and joining the girls' swim team, you know, for example. That criteria is very well spelled out, and the bar is set very high. That, you know, the language we put together, Danny and I did, that that's language that came from the WIA after consulting Washington, the state of Washington's WIAA, the Colorado Athletic Association, and the NCAA. So I have to believe that those organizations have very intelligent attorneys that spent hours crafting that policy and crafting those criteria. So, you know, if we think we can craft a better policy, then we could certainly attack that. But again, it's not a matter of should we allow these students or not. That's already been decided, and now it's a matter of how do we accommodate those students. And again, how do we protect again, not just the transgender students, but how do we protect the non-transgender students at the same time? And I think with that criteria, I think it does a great job.
Well, and I think one of the things that we have to look at and consider is that, you know, We have other states and other people, and this policy is just what it is. It's a policy, and sometimes the nuts and bolts have to be handled through Jim and Danny and our other staff, working with our public, you know, saying, okay, well, how do we handle it when we have that? How is it so it's going to be good for all parties involved with it? And we aren't reinventing the wheel. We could go back to either other school districts in the state or to Washington and to consult with them to say, hey, what are you doing in these situations? You have that experience. We can draw on that, but obviously drawing it with, working with our community and doing the bare bones for what we can do the best we can for all of our students.
Further comments?
I would concur. Jim, thank you. You know, it's not a matter of our choosing, it's a given. I think from a historical position, this country struggled to understand biracial marriage and had to come to accept that. Very recently, this country had to come and accept gay and lesbian marriage as the rule of the land. And I think the younger generation is way ahead of where many of us are in recognizing, as my 12-year-old said before I came to this meeting, Dad, if you go on the internet, they have a slide that shows all of these skeletons, and it identifies this is gay, this is straight, this is X, this is Y, and there's absolutely no difference in those skeletons. And that's from a 12-year-old. That's how she sees the world. The differences that we see from our generation and the struggles that we've had, I think, are very different from the ones that the younger generation sees, and I applaud them for that. I think they see through difference to arrive at something that's more fundamentally human. And I would be in favor of this.
Further comments on the motion and the second on the floor? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion and the second for the first reading as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
No, Mr. Mortimer's opposition. Nothing else on the agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait a minute, we gotta back up. We gotta do
Right.
370 and 377,
Yeah, you
I'm
put
sorry.
those out.
I'm sorry. I would entertain a motion to table 370 and 377, student co-curriculars and athletic programs.
Pending second reading.
Correct.
I move to approve those two, subject to this approval of the second reading.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Move to adjourn.
Remember, one board meeting in December 15th. Don't show up on
Is there a
December
second to the
8th.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
Move to adjourn.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?